uh, we'll just start this up. First, just to tell you, Brian, and all the coaches that are here, just a little bit about Pro Coaches Academy. We try to do this once a month online. So I'm based in Vietnam, so I'll also do a clinic one time per month in Vietnam. We do one online, and like to have a bunch of different topics. And Brian's covering something that we haven't covered yet, which I know we had a lot of interest in our group chat. We also have a Pro Coaches Academy group chat. It's about 105 coaches from 30 countries, just talking different concepts, drills, ideas. And I had them. I created a poll asking what would coaches would be interested in next, and this was one of the hot topics. So,
Very cool.
a lot of votes for this, a lot of people interested in. So I think we're gonna have a lot of people join probably in the next 5 minutes or so here. But I think we'll just get started. Brian, for you coaches that are here, is basically a performance consultant, helping with performance, helping with culture, helping with leadership on the mental side of things, right? And he former Division I player, played at Davidson. If you just caught our conversation, played at the same university Steph Curry played at. So kind of an impressive background, getting his doctorate right now, and just knows all things about the mental side of performance. So without further ado, Brian, I'll let you take it over. It's your show, and yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. And I may need access to do that. But as I'm doing that,
Alright.
Just
Bom,
kidding.
então, yeah.
cool. Just want to highlight, I think this is an incredible thing that you all are doing, both Matt and your leading of it, but also, and you all showing up, trying to learn, trying to find opportunities to get better. I think I'll talk a little about my experience, but coaching's hard. It's not easy. And so to invest in your own performance and your own development is something that I admire. I'm excited to hear there's some real interest in the mental side of coaching because and I'll share a little bit, but being in America, it's been a slower burn there. And so I'll give you a little bit of context, a little bit of background on me and kind of how I got here because I think this is maybe a little bit different than a lot of coach kind of webinars. And we'll get into it. So Matt touched a little bit, but how I got interested in this actually started from my background as a player. I played at Davidson College. Really loved that experience. We had a lot of success. And then after that, played professionally. So I played in Germany, Czech Republic, and Australia. And throughout that process, I had my own struggles from the mental side as a player. How do I bounce back from mistakes? How do I bounce back from bad games? I dealt with some performance anxiety, and it really got me interested in the mental side of being a great performer. Then, when I got done playing, I went back to Davidson, and I coached there. I was the director of their player development, and through that, kind of realized it wasn't just me struggling with the mental side of things that a lot of athletes were. We just weren't talking about it back then. And so that's really what kind of motivated me to leave basketball coaching specifically and get more into the mental performance coaching side of things. I went back to school, and it was actually there that I thought I was going to learn all about performance psychology. I was going to make sense of my playing career, learn all these things I wish I would have known. What I realized though was I actually needed it more as a coach than I did as a player. That coaches are performers, that you all have a lot of expectation on you, depending on the levels you coach at. There's a lot of pressure on you. And not only does it impact how you coach, but it impacts every athlete that's being coached by you, which kind of motivated me to lean into this area. And so now I'm finishing up my doctoral degree, researching coach mental health and performance. And on the side, I do a lot with teams and a lot with coaches on how do we use performance psychology to help get the most out of leaders and athletes and be able to perform under pressure when it matters most. And so that's kind of the direction, a little bit of background and where we'll go today. Um, Objectives kind of for today, just give you a little bit of an overview, is to really kind of expand our idea of what great coaching is and what it looks like. I'll propose a few frameworks that I think can kind of give you some creativity to recognize what works for you and what doesn't. And then also get into some practical strategies on, okay, what does it look like to apply this in my life, right? Because I think as coaches, we're really quick to learn. I think coaches are some of the smartest people I know, and they're really quick to learn, and then they're quick to implement it or to lead it. And I think the opportunity is for us to live it, right? For us to embody what it means to be a high performer and model that so that our athletes can do the same. Um, Before I get started, though, a couple key things I want to touch on. One, interrupt me at any time, right? I could talk slides, research for hours. My goal here is that you take something away. And so if there are questions, that is welcome. I love skepticism, right? If I say something and you're like, whoa, 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 I'm calling BS. Please interrupt. Like that's where the good stuff happens. Let's talk. And then the other thing I'll name is just I have some experience playing and actually coaching internationally, but primarily this is all rooted in my experience as American. So I'll show some clips. It's exclusively American coaches, and even some of this research is done in Western, more individualistic cultures. Um, Not because I think that's better, but just kind of where I am and what media access I have. So I think it's really helpful to use videos to learn, and so I just wanted to name that from the onset. Any questions before we get into it? Thoughts or otherwise, I'll keep rolling.
You can keep
Cool.
going.
All right. Sweet. So, what is great coaching, right? There are three core components to be a great coach, right? The first, the one that I think jumps out to us is you need to have mastery of your sport. There's no getting around that, right? To be a great basketball coach, you need to know basketball. You need to have kind of schemes in place. You need to have great philosophy on your approach. You need to be able to run an effective practice, right? That you got to have a level of basketball IQ. I argue, though, that that's where we spend most of our coach development time, and it's actually the least important. When we think about great coaches, that the mastery of the sport is kind of the entry level ticket to become a great coach, and that the separators come from these other components. The mastery to lead others, right? That you could have all of the basketball acumen in the world, but if your players don't like you, trust you, believe in you, commit to you and your vision, um, it's not terribly effective. And you see this all the time, especially in the NBA, where some of the most brilliant minds in basketball are fired after a season or two seasons because they lost the locker room, which is really a way of saying that their leadership of others was not as effective as it needed to be. Underneath that, and I think what I'll talk about is what I think is most effective is the mastery of leading yourself. That coaches are performers, that our ability to know our vision, to know our purpose, and to stay aligned with that is the greatest separator that we can have as coaches. And so I think they're all very important. And truth be told, I geek out on if I go on Twitter and I see all the X's and O's and all these ball screen defenses, like I love that stuff. But I think my challenge is as coaches to start thinking of your role a little bit broader than that. What I'll do today is actually to touch on each of these, right? So, and I'll go kind of in opposite order. So really starting and spending our most time with what does it look like to lead yourself? Then going in, what does it look like to lead others well? And then I'm not going to kind of talk X's and O's, but what does it look like to implement your X's and O's basketball philosophy really effectively? Um, the thing I'll say, I know there's a range of coaches in here. My research and my practice, I really work with kind of I would call like elite level coaches. So thinking about NCAA coaches and beyond. But I think that this applies whether you're coaching youth, high school, anywhere that these kind of principles apply. It's just really in how you adapt them. The last thing I'll say before we keep going is that I think you all are probably already doing some of this stuff at really high levels. When I work with coaches, I'm always blown away by the amount of knowledge they have. And often think, man, if they just talk to each other rather than me, we would all be in a really good spot. So as things come up, as we talk about these things, chime in, kind of say, oh, this is what I've done. I found this to be really effective. Because I think that, I don't want to pretend like I'm the knower of all things, that you all are the ones doing the coaching, boots on the ground. And I think that matters. Um, cool. So, the mastery of leading yourself, it really starts with the idea that you as a coach are a performer. That the athletes are not the only performers, but that the way you show up, the way you handle pressure, the way you handle stress, the way you pursue goals, is equally, if not more important than how your athletes do. It's to starting to treat yourself like a performer. With coaches, it kind of introduced this framework that your performance is your capacity minus interference or minus distraction. And when we think about capacity, we think about it in a few different ways, right? The first is your motivational capacity or what drives you. And I'll kind of give an overview and then we'll take a deeper dive into each of these. But do you have a coherent philosophy on who you are as a coach, what matters to you as a coach, who you want to be as a coach, and then a blueprint on how you're going to execute that? That interference or distraction often comes from other people placing their philosophy onto you, whether it's GMs, athletes, um, front office, that we need to have our own philosophy so that we can kind of minimize distraction, be rooted in our purpose and our values. Then we think about physical capacity, that your performance, even as a coach, even though you're not physical performers, the way that you take care of yourself, the way that you sleep, recover, eat, exercise, that's the foundation of any high performance. That's the foundation of any wellness. So to do it sustainably, we have to kind of build our physical capacity up. The better we do that, the better we have this emotional capacity or the ability to regulate our emotions, especially as a coach, right? You're going to be in crowded gyms. There's going to be, refs making bad calls. There's going to be sometimes, depending on the level you coach at, your job's going to be on the line, depending on how that outcome goes. And so your ability to stay poised, to stay regulated under that is going to fuel your team's ability to do the same. And we'll talk more about that. And then lastly, this mental capacity. Can you focus on the right things at the right time, right? There's endless distractions as a coach. There's endless video that you can watch. There's endless, X's and O's. There's endless expectation on you, right? Your ability to focus on the process, to focus on the right thing at the right time, is going to drive your performance. So, to break each down, starting with motivational capacity, right? This idea of, do we know who we are, what we're about, and what drives us? There's a really popular quote that says, "Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will." And not that I totally disagree with that, but I do disagree with that. I think distraction kills more dreams than failure ever will. And so there's a research done on a group of coaches. They call them serial winning coaches. It's coaches who win at the highest levels. So thinking about Olympic champion coaches, world championship coaches, pro level coaches, and they do it over long periods of time. And the research found they looked at what drives these coaches. What's the thing that sets them apart? And the first thing they found was that they have a coaching philosophy, that they understand who they are as a coach, what they're trying to achieve, what their values are as a coach. They have this really, really highly attuned sense of what they're about as a coach, and that drives their decision making, that drives their actions and behaviors. And so all of us, whether we talk about it or have written it down, we operate under a sense of beliefs about coaching athletes, performance, success. And so the more clearly we've defined those, the more it allows us to show up with trust. More it allows us to show up with consistency in who we are. And that consistency is what allows athletes to trust us. And so, a clear philosophy, and we can talk more about this as we go, but a clear philosophy helps build your own confidence, your own clarity and trust. It helps you lead and stay connected to your purpose. One of the biggest things is it guides decision making, right? If we have a blueprint for what we want to do, then it's easier to kind of focus out other opinions, things that are distractions, and make our decisions. And then it allows you to kind of clearly and effectively communicate with athletes. Now, one thing that I see with some of the coaches that I've worked with is this idea that coaches are the best thieves in the world. They steal plays, they steal sets, they steal schemes, and it's beautiful. Like I'm a thief too. I don't come. Very little of this is original. It's kind of my own take on what other smarter people have come up with. But when it comes to a philosophy, you can't just hit copy and paste, right? John Wooden's philosophy was John Wooden's philosophy because he spent hours and hours and hours reflecting on it, refining it, iterating it, right? And so I can't just go and take, Steve Kerr's philosophy and copy and paste it and think that that's going to work for me because it actually comes from the sense of who am I, what matters to me, and actually that the process of creating one is what allows it to be effective. And again, as I'm going, jump in with questions, thoughts, anything. Kind of that next pillar, right? Thinking about physical capacity. And so as coaches, this is maybe a little counterintuitive because it's really our mind that's running the show here, not our we're not physical performers. But we know that as coaches, we have to make decisions, sometimes split second decisions. We have to be able to connect with others. We have to be able to stay attentive to what matters, and that the biggest pillars for being able to do so is sleep and recovery. There's no avoiding sleep and recovery. And so I'm actually going to share this clip. He's an NFL. I don't know how popular the NFL is in all of your locations, but it's the biggest league we have here in America. Uh, Sean McVay won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and he highlights a couple things about himself as a physical performer that I want to touch on, and then get more practical from here. And I hope I shared sound, so let me know if you can hear this. Okay.
I used to like almost think it was cool
Yep.
to be able to get away with sleeping. That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like I mean, like it's crazy to me though, because when your job is to deal with people, you got to establish healthy habits that are in alignment with sustaining this when there's a lot of external stressors that the season entails.
What are some of those tools, some of those things, some of those resources you were able to tap into after that season going into last year that you feel like really helped you?
Yeah, people just want results and people want to live. I almost became, I'm not on social media, but it's almost like I was living in a social media where you're living a curated life and you want to uphold this image. And it's like, bro, that ain't real. That ain't being a human being. And I think there was a lot of peace in acknowledging a lot of the challenges and struggles that I've gone through. And shoot, am I totally perfect? Hell no. I'll continue to do that. But I think I'm better equipped with the people around and the perspective and the purpose to not go down those roads again. But it was dark, man.
So I show that for two reasons. One, he's kind of talking about his motivational capacity, right? To bring people around him that help him stay committed to his purpose. But also he talked about this culture in coaching, and I'm biased toward American culture, that there's no time for sleep. That there's more film to watch, there's more recruiting to be done. And this is a coach that coaches at the highest level saying that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I have to agree, right? That your ability to make decisions under pressure, your ability to kind of communicate your game plan heading into game is dependent on how well you take care of yourself, these healthy habits. More practically, one of the big places I start with coaches is actually thinking about routines. So performers, even coaches, right? They have this ability to kind of switch into a performance mindset, right? I don't know if I asked the group, maybe a handful, you would have these performance routines. On game day, I like to do this, this, and this to kind of switch on my mindset, which is great. I love that. I think equally as important is our performance routine to switch off. Right, that after a tough game, that after a tough practice, it's really, really easy to replay things in your head over and over and over again to say, oh, well, I wish I would have done this differently. My college coach, who I love dearly, he didn't sleep after games like that. And so thinking about how do we switch off so that we can recover so that the next day we can show up as our best performer, and really thinking about what are the ways that we can do that, whether it's a quick journaling, reflecting after the game. We'll talk about one way to do that later. Deep breathing, exercising, ways that we have to switch off, because to do this over long periods of time, you got to be able to sustain it. The next pillar is emotional capacity, right? And sometimes, at least in America, we're hesitant to talk about emotions in sport. We think there's no space for them. But the truth is they show up, right? That we're emotional beings. And research tells us that coaches set the temperature of the team, right? That if a coach is angry, the players feel that anger. If a coach is happy or enthusiastic, the players feel that. And so the most effective coaches are not ones that say, hey, calm down, right? They actually exude calmness and say, hey, let's take a deep breath. Let's calm down here, right? They model the emotion they're trying to get out of their athletes. I'll show two clips. And my point here is not to say that one is right or wrong, because I don't know the relationships, but I want you to imagine if you're in that huddle, what it would feel like for you. Oh, hit the wrong button there. All right, here's the first one. Goodness, where's the blood pressure been? So I have my own biases. I'm not saying there's never a time or place to get on an athlete, but what I am saying is you better be sure that the way they respond to that emotion is going to be effective for their performance, right? I'll show you another one.
Stop jokes. Stop taking yourself so seriously. You're allowed to make a mistake. If you're so tired and wound up,
Another clip there. I really like that because he's helping that player saying, hey, relax, right? But he's exuding what it looks like to be relaxed. He's got relaxed shoulders. He's using loose body language. His tone is relaxed, right? And so thinking about you all as coaches, as a thermostat, right? That you get to set the temperature, and your ability to regulate your own emotions allows the team to do so effectively. I think especially under pressure, right? That teams won't respond to pressure the way you tell them to. They'll respond to pressure the way you show them to. And so your ability to remain calm, composed under pressure, that's shared with the team. They get to feed off of that. But if you're frantic, if you are fast-paced in ways that are unhelpful, I would expect your team to do the same thing. Some ways that we can kind of practice this are there's practices like mindfulness, there's journaling, and then even using tools like visualization to say, okay, can we practice with coaches have done this, like let's practice a situation that would really get you fired up in an unhelpful way. And then we'll walk through it. Maybe it's a bad call. Maybe it's two bad calls in a row right before a timeout. And then we'll kind of walk through practicing. All right, during that timeout, you take two deep breaths, you walk away, you take two deep breaths before you come back to the huddle so that you, right, are turning the dials. The dials aren't just turning you. And I think that can be a really effective way to do that. The last capacity for coaches as performers is to think about your mental capacity, right? That performance happens in the present moment, and that as coaches, your job is to help your players focus on the right thing at the right time. The only way that you can do that as a coach is if you have the ability to focus on the right thing at the right time. I kind of talked about it. Sean McVay talked about it. There are endless distractions. You could be thinking about that mistake your player made 2 plays ago. You could be thinking about bad calls from the officials. You could be thinking about how this game is going to impact our playoff standings. You You could be thinking about how this game is going to impact my job security, right? There's endless distractions, and your job as a coach is to be able to focus on the process, on what we have control over, on the right thing at the right time so that you can help your athletes do the same. I love this clip I'm going to share. This is a college football coach. They're a national championship favorite, and they go down, they're getting killed at halftime. And this is kind of how the coach responds to help his athletes focus on the right thing at the right time.
Hey guys, listen to me, listen to me. I need all your eyes here. Okay? This is what we train for. This is what we work for. This is who we are. We sat right here and we got an identity game against Missouri on the road. You know what? It was very similar to this. It was very similar. It was sloppy. It was nasty. It wasn't pretty. And then we came out and we found a way. We always said it would not be pretty. Here's the goal for the second half. We're going to get about 6 possessions on offense. 6 possessions. Y'all got me? Including the first one. We're going to score on 4 from them. Okay? They might score once more on defense, but that's it. You understand? And we're going to win the game. We're going to come back in here and have a good time and figure out how we can get better. But this is what I need. This is what I need. Anybody listening? I don't hear what I need. We need to win one moment at a time. What's the first moment? Kickoff return.
Georgia is trailing. It is not how things usually go in Athens.
What's the next moment? The first play on offense.
Back wants to throw deep. He's got rah-rah.
Not the drive, the first play.
Makes the catch.
We're going to win one moment at a time because we're not outcome related. We're not worried about the outcome of that play. We're worried about winning a moment, Ernest. Can I win one moment? Then everybody look at it, Taki, say one more moment, coach. You say one more moment, Rush. We say it. One more moment. One more moment. Marcus, one more moment. You got me? You look me in the eye and tell me, rah-rah. It's going to be one more moment on the fade. One more moment, and we go kick their ass by how we play. Let's go.
All right. I apologize. He's got a thick Southern accent. So, but I love that clip. And I think that kind of speaks to why I love working with coaches is rather than training 100 football players to help focus on the present moment, right? To help bring their attention to the task at hand, the coach is able to do that. And when the coach is able to do that and help say, hey, there's all this distraction, all these outcome related things. All we have to do right now, the only thing we have control over is to dominate the next play. And his ability to do that helps his athletes to do that. It's way more impactful that way. And so more practically here, we can think about, again, I think visualization is a really, really helpful tool to say, hey, what are the distractions that show up that pull me away from the present moment? And how can I see myself responding more effectively? So that when those distractions do show up, we've prepared for them. They're not just going to totally throw us off guard. The other thing are things like attentional training. So mindfulness-based attention training is a practice here in America that's become really popular. That says, can we, put our attention on a task at hand, notice when our mind wanders, and then bring it back. Really popular amongst athletes and becoming more popular with coaches to be able to focus on the process, right? Another really simple thing is to set goals before the game to say, hey, first quarter, my focus is going to be on 1, 2, and 3. Second quarter, my focus is going to be on 1, 2, and 3. Halftime, maybe you can adjust, say third quarter, we need to focus on 1, 2, and 3. And really kind of the more we can give ourselves something to focus on, the less kind of pulled to distractions we'll be. That is kind of thinking about coaches as performers. I'll pause there because we're going to kind of switch gears. Don't feel like you have to now. We'll save some time at the end. But any questions, thoughts, reflections, things that you all think you do well?
I've got a question for you. As you talk about some of the visualization techniques you mentioned for coaches, I'm wondering, is there a certain visualization technique maybe for players that you have found coaches have had success with when a coach is talking to his players like we just saw there?
Sorry, I cut out there just for a minute. Can you ask that again?
I was saying, so with these visualization techniques, is there any in particular, like maybe a specific technique that coaches have found has worked best for them with players, or sorry, that you have found some of the coaches you work with has had success with when trying to get through to players, if that makes sense?
Yeah. To help them get through to players?
Yeah, just like, I mean, what visualization techniques have got through to the players for the coaches that you work with? Like which ones they have the most success with?
I'm just going to clarify a little bit more. When the coaches are doing visualization with the players,
Yeah, so the coaches are trying
or
to get the players to visualize, yeah. Any
oh,
certain
gotcha. Okay. Yes, good question. So we kind of talk about it in terms of two styles of it. One is like a mastery visualization or to see yourself doing something really well. And players are typically pretty engaged with doing that. I think a lot of players naturally do
they like
that.
that part, huh?
What's that?
Said they probably like that part more.
They like that one. The one they're less excited about is like what we call an adversity visualization, to see themselves screwing up, to see themselves making a mistake, and then practicing or rehearsing how they want to respond to it. Um, I can get a little more specific on how we teach it if that's helpful. But really, the goal being is that it's a skill that we can practice. And the goal, just like with our physical practice, we want it to be as realistic as possible. With our visualization or our mental practice, we want to continue to kind of add layers to it so that it's really specific, right? So that when you're playing at this gym and the score is this much, right, that you've been there before, you know what it's going to sound like, you know what it's going to look like, to really kind of help make it as specific as possible. But by and large, athletes like to see themselves doing things well.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions for Brian?
Yeah, I think I had one, Matt.
Go ahead, Coach Moses.
Yeah, it's me. Okay, thank you, Coach Matt. Thank you, Coach Brian. Very interesting what Coach Brian Sullivan has presented us here. And I underlined few things and also a few new things, especially about attentional training. But in this moment, I had the same question as Coach Matt, the same about the visualization. Well, I had failure experience about the visualization, especially in teaching them how to visualize things, how to teach them about the visualization skill. I think this is a very important skill. And then how to harmonize or create like the same perception about what we try to visualize for the team, because many has sometimes different perceptions, different perceptions. So in the results, it happened many times to me, for me, different visualization. And then a bit about my experience before. The goal setting here is very important, and I break down those goals from the practice, and then to the game plan, and then in the locker room itself. But I found the problem, different perception about the goals. I think my mistake was about teaching them how to visualize such things. So I need you to help me with the problem, how to teach them this visualization skill. And I also underline your words about attentional training. It's really new for me, and it is related to. I think, in my opinion, I think this is related to the visualization skill. I think that's my question. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Coach Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Moses. It sounds like you're doing a lot of things really well. I'll speak to a couple things. One, to the last point, I agree that the better we can pay attention, the better we can visualize. Distractions show up during visualization. Two, and I'm actually going to bargain with you a little bit. How about I answer your question on teaching visualization at the end? Because I think there's a lot more there. And I can actually pull up a different set of slides and we can talk more specifically about the process of teaching visualization. Because I think when we break it down, it becomes a little bit easier to teach. And then this idea of shared perception, that's actually what I'm about to jump into now in terms of shared perception on goals and what we're trying to accomplish. Does that sound like a good deal?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll let you
Uh,
keep going, and we'll come back to it then.
I'll come back to that because I really like that. But there, yeah, I want to give that the time it deserves. So right when we switch to that next kind of competency or capability, right? The mastery of leading others. How do we create teams that are bought in? How do we create teams that are committed? How do we create teams that are cohesive? Uh, I believe there's not really a better way to do this than creating a team identity, a shared identity. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, if we kind of zoom out and set the stage as coaches, right? That ultimately in outcome related jobs, right? We're after performance, high performance, risk taking, playing under pressure, being committed. But in order to get there, we have to kind of meet these building blocks. Right? That you can't perform well if you're not sleeping, hydrating, fed. And similarly, in order to get to that high level performance, we have to kind of build these important steps of belonging, of trust, of consistency, but then also standards, roles, and expectations. And the more clarity we have on those things, the better off we're going to be able to just play freely. And so when we think about building a team identity, it's really thinking about how do we build that sense of belonging? How do we build that sense of trust? How do we build that sense of commitment and collaboration? With every team that I work with, this is where we start. We don't start with what, we start with who. I don't care if you're coaching at the highest levels or youth basketball or anywhere in between, that most athletes, most performers are going into that season, that game with certain outcomes in mind. And we know the research tells us that outcome goals don't really move the needle very much. Where we start to get a competitive advantage is we say, all right, well, this is what we want to accomplish. This is how we're going to do that day by day. What are the things that we need to do that are going to give us the best chance, right? So when we start to work with process goals, that's where we start to create a pretty big advantage. The best, though, I believe, they start with who. What makes us who we are? What does it mean to be one of us? And what do we want to be together? And when we start with that, there's this deep well of motivation, of belonging. And when we start with that and say, then what does that look like today? And then where do we want to go from that together? That's where the most success is found, is really starting with the identity. To do that, right, what we're really doing is we want athletes to start seeing themselves less about I and me and start seeing themselves more as a part of us and we, right? And I think generationally, especially here in America, like it's harder and harder to do. We're a very individualistic culture. And so, right, we used to be able to just get athletes to say, hey, buy in because I'm the coach. That's harder and harder to do. So we have to create something that's worth buying into, right? There has to be a sense of what am I buying into? And so the first step is to kind of reflect on who are we and why do we matter, right? And one of the most effective ways that we can do this is to start developing core values for a team to say, all right, at the end of the season, whether it's high school basketball and we're just playing one season together, whether it's college basketball, maybe we'll get 2 or 3 years, professional basketball more like 1 year these days. Right, what do we want to be about this year? What's going to make us who we are, and how do we grow on that? The next step is to then identify what do we want to do. Like what are we going after? Right. So what are the goals that we're pursuing together? And what's going to get in the way of us achieving those goals? Importantly, right, is then to the realizing phase of how do we become what we want to be. So we started with kind of the who of who we are, then we've gotten to the what of what we want to achieve, what are our goals, and then now from there we're working on, all right, how do we bridge the gap? How do we bridge the gap to define what does it look like day to day? What are the standards that we want to set? What are the behaviors that we want to hold each other accountable to? And then most importantly, right, is to revisit or reflect that goals and values are only as good as we're willing to revisit them. If we set goals in the beginning of the year and we don't revisit them, or if we set standards in the beginning of the year and we don't revisit them, if we set values in the beginning of the year, we don't revisit them, they're worthless. They're no good. That we have to then hold ourselves accountable to saying, how are we doing? What do we need to do differently? What are we doing well? And that the more clarity there is here, the more athletes are willing to buy into something, the more they're willing to commit to something, and the more ownership they feel in it. I'll talk a little more specifically about what it looks like in the work that I do with teams. But I think the beautiful thing about this is that the coach plays a massive role in developing this shared identity, right? That there's these four principles of creating an identity from a leader's perspective. The first one that leaders can do is once the team has defined what their values or what they're about, the leader can embody it, right? So leaders, your goal is to achieve as much influence as possible. That's what leadership is. And one of the most effective ways you can do that is to kind of be the prototype of what the group is about. So if your group says that it's really important, teamwork is really important, or humility is really important, competitiveness is really important, joy, you name it, you should probably embody those things, right? If you're doing the exact opposite of what the team says they're about, they're going to say, he's not one of us, she's not one of us. I'm not interested in playing for that coach or listening to that coach. So really embodying what the group says they're about. The next piece is to do it for us, right? That you want all the athletes on your team to say, hey, this coach, he or she's our champion. They are helping us move forward. And that it's not about the coach's individual success. It's not about the coach's individual accolades, but their actual job is to lead the team. I played for a coach in Australia. He coached with some of their national teams, and he said it about as well as any coach ever has. He said to us in our preseason meeting, he said, "I'm the bus driver, but you guys are the bus, and you're telling me where to go. I'm just moving the thing." And that was, I think, a great embodiment of like, hey, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help the team. This is about the group first. And there was a real sense of buy-in around it. The next step is thinking about how do you craft a sense of us? How do you create stories? How do you create a shared understanding of what it means to be a member of your group? The coaches I work with have some resources. And so like some of the things we think about are, what pictures are hanging in your facilities? What do your t-shirts say? What are the stories you're telling? What players do you use as role models? How are you kind of building this identity of this is who we are, this is what we're about, and this is what matters to us. And then the last piece is to make us or this identity matter. And so thinking about what are the structures, events, routines we put in place to do this. I for the interest of time, I pulled this clip, but there's a great clip of Steve Kerr talking about the Golden State Warriors, and one of their core values is joy. And he says, if joy is our values, I better create and have joy when I show up to practice. And so he talks about how they use music, they use videos, how they celebrate people's birthdays to create this sense of joy because that's what the team is about. In college athletics, where I kind of focus, a lot of teams talk about how important it is that they are a team or together. And then they go to team meals and everyone has their headphones in and their phones out, which doesn't really embody a sense of togetherness. So one of the things that we talk about is no headphones and no phones during team meals, right? If together is who we say we are, then we should build systems and processes in place to trust that or to build that. I'll keep moving along. The other thing I'll say here is that when athletes have a buy-in to this, it really frees the coach up to hold them accountable, right? That when athletes say, hey, we want to be a team that's together, or we want to be a team that's competitive, what the coach can then do is hold up a mirror to them and say, hey, you said that you wanted to be competitive, but this is what I'm seeing. And it gives you a little bit more tools under your tool belt to say you don't have to yell as much or get on them as much, that when people have ownership, they tend to take ownership. And so I think that can be really, really powerful and also helping athletes hold each other accountable. I'll share this clip because I think it's a really, really, really good sense of how powerful this is. This is a clip from the.
Thank you. No answer to that.
I'll get to the right point. This is a clip from the Paris Olympics, right? This is a British coach who's coaching the U.S. women's soccer team, and this is their last team meeting before they play in the gold medal match. And you'll see, right? She's not talking about outcomes. She's not even talking about process. She's talking about the identity of the group and a chance to prove that on the world's biggest stage.
Joy that will go with them through their life, and a memory that I'm not sure you can have too many moments that will top it in life. In terms of, before I show you the video, there's three things I want to say. The first is that I'm so proud of what we are building. And I don't want to say what we've built, because I think after 75, 76 days, for me being in this position, I'm proud of the direction we're going in. I think the importance of joy. I know you hear me express it, and I mean it. I've honestly had more fun in the last month than I for sure have had in the last few years. And I want to thank you for that, because you brought so much joy back into my heart. And on behalf of the whole staff, I think everybody feels the same way. Belief, you can't do any of this without having that. And I've spent so much time asking us to focus on the process and focus on the day to day. But I know it's important that deep down for each and every one of us to have that belief that with every day, we can get a little bit closer to the things that we've all dreamed about. And today is obviously one of those. And most importantly, I'm in a team because I like team and I believe in doing things together. Of course, not everybody can play all of the time, but everybody has not only contributed in an unbelievable way, but everybody has embraced their role in a way where I have learned so much from you all. So it leaves us with one thing to do. And I can sit here and say to you, listen, this game is about a gold medal game and winning a gold medal. Actually, it's not. Today is getting another opportunity to play with your friends. And I want you to make sure you play like it is like that today. All right? I'm proud of you. And this is the last one of our trip.
I love that clip. For what it's worth, they went on to win the gold medal. But right, that the U.S. women's national team had decided that what was important to them or who they were was joy, belief, and together. And that in the moment of peak performance or peak pressure, she brought them back to that, right? That can kind of center us, ground us, focus our attention on the right things, and create this sense of commitment or buy-in. Going a little long, so I'll kind of scoot along so we have some time for questions. The last piece, right? So we've talked about leading yourself, we've talked about leading others, and then kind of what we're most familiar with, or at least maybe what I assume we're most familiar with, is mastery of your sport. I'm not here to talk X's and O's as much as I think I could or wish I could. Ball screen defense, none of that. But how do whatever we are teaching, how do we teach as effectively as possible? And so I think this kind of like shared perspective of using team learning is a really, really powerful tool that you can have in your tool belt. So it's called after action reviews, right? Or simply performance reflections. And the idea is that after any performance, as a group, you reflect on what happened to create a shared understanding. Research across medical fields, corporate fields, military fields has shown that after action reviews improve performance by 20 to 25%. And it's a really, really simple practice to help create a shared perception of what's happening. Before I get into how to run one, I'll just kind of talk about the key ingredients quickly. First, in order to do an effective reflection, it has to be about allowing group members to have a sense of be a part of that reflection, right? in a film session after practice or a game, if the coach just tells everyone exactly what happened and exactly what needs to happen, that there's not really a sense of active reflection going on for those athletes. They just kind of become robots. And so giving every athlete kind of a chance to reflect on what went well, what can be improved, and how am I going to do that? The other piece, and just like really for any learning in general, it should be about the growth, right? That after action reviews isn't to say, hey, you played terrible, you played great, but to say, hey, whether we won or we lost, how can we get better from this? How can we use this to propel us forward? And with that, one thing I'll say is that by and large, we are not great at learning from performance, particularly after wins. At least with the athletes I work with, a win equals great, a loss equals terrible, and we have a harder time kind of pulling out the lessons that we can grow and improve from those things. The third piece is to be specific. That if you're implementing some part of your basketball acumen, to reflect on that exactly. So maybe it's a new drill where you're putting in a new press defense. It's to hit pause after that and say, okay, within that press defense, how can we learn from that to use it more effectively? Or maybe it's after a game and you are really focused on attacking a zone offense. Let's say, all right, then let's reflect on our zone offense so that we can learn lessons from that and apply them going forward. That the more specific we can be, the more effective it's going to be. And then lastly, that there should be multiple perspectives involved. That, right? In order to create a shared understanding or a shared team learning, that all the kind of members need to have the ability to have their perspective heard. Otherwise, it's not shared. It's just coming from one person. So it's really pretty simple, but it's really just to hit pause and say, rather than tell the athletes how they did, to ask questions that lead to their learning, right? You don't want to give them the answers. You want to give them the options to find their answers. And so it's really just reflecting on, what did we set out to do? What was the mission that we tried to accomplish? What actually happened, right? And honestly, sometimes you'll find that there's not a ton of clarity or shared understanding on those things, which is really pretty eye-opening as a coach. Say like, wow, that player was way different perspective than what I thought, and it kind of help us communicate these things going forward. Is then thinking, what happened? Why did our outcomes not match what we set out to do? That's where we can really start to bring out the lessons of what actually happened. How can we learn from this? And then to summarize it and say, what did we learn from this? And maybe most importantly, what are we committed to doing about these learnings or these lessons, right? More simply, right, you can even break it down to say, what went well? What's worth improving? What are we going to do about it? And the hard part as a coach is that, you probably have the answers to the test. And it's not to give the athletes the answers to the test, but to help them find their own answers to the test, because we are usually all more compelled to follow things that we think that we came up with than when other people tell us things. At least that's my own bias. And so really thinking about, all the different things you're trying to put in place, can we just reflect on them as a group, create this shared understanding, and then put that into practice in terms of all the different parts of the game that we're teaching. A couple last things. I know I'm kind of wrapping quickly here, but this is really the idea, right? That we prepare and perform, we reflect and adapt, and then we plan and set goals, right? And that's the cycle of continuously getting better. To prepare and perform, reflect and adapt, use that to plan and set goals, and then just keep spinning the wheel. And the athletes, the teams, the coaches that just keep spinning that wheel, that keep growing, keep iterating, that those are the ones that over the long haul typically find the most success. And there's some good research to support that. I will, a couple things for you all. Appreciate you all being here. What we have, a little bit of like a kind of peek behind the look of what I do with teams or with coaches, is help them kind of develop their own philosophy. That first kind of motivational capacity, that first pillar. And so thought I'd share a free playbook for you all to start kind of building or reflecting on yours. And I can leave that up for a moment.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. And then lastly, get in touch, right? I love talking to coaches. If you scan this QR code, that'll have my social media, email. I think my phone number's on there too. I'm on WhatsApp. That I'm really, this is like kind of, I love this stuff. And so if there's follow-up questions, and Moses, we may not have time to dive into visualization because I have a team session I have to run to shortly. But please reach out to me. I have some further resources that I would love to send to you on how to teach visualization a little bit more effectively.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian.
That
You got to run now.
I have a few minutes, maybe like 5 minutes for questions, if there are any.
Yeah, there's a couple in the group chat. We got a chat box.
Couple. Cool. I'll take a swing.
If our character is affecting how we coach, should we let it take over our coaching, or should we know how to control our emotions and show what's best in that certain situation?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is it depends, right? That there are times when your emotion is going to be really helpful, right? That maybe you're really passionate, that maybe you are really excited. And if it's helpful, we let it ride, right? There's also going to be times where your emotions are very unhelpful. Maybe it's frustration. Maybe honestly, it's excitement at the wrong times. And so it's not a there's no easy answer here, but it's to be able to determine, right, the more clarity we have on who we are as a coach, the more we can use that to say, hey, is this emotion helping me be that coach, or is it getting in the way of me being that coach? And so using that, and I think that's why that coach philosophy is so important, is it gives you kind of a measuring stick to say, hey, did that help me be that coach, or did that get in the way of me being that coach? That answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Yep.
I'm not sure if you have time for this one or not.
Let's do it.
Two-part question that ties together one, time management techniques for implementing mental health exercises into already busy schedules. And then two, are there certain times in a day before practice or not close to practice times where you find players' emotional capacity is highest or lowest to engage with mental health exercises?
Ooh, that's two great questions. I think, especially around like, and the we've kind of like, mindfulness has its own roots, but in America, it's become kind of a secular practice. And one of the quotes around it is that the busier you are, or the less time you have for mindfulness, the more you need it. And so I think part of it is prioritizing, right? Like, and with coaches, I'll talk about, hey, what's the cost benefit of you watching one more game film versus you spending 30 minutes reflecting, or getting 30 minutes extra of sleep? And so really like actually seeing these things as productive as performance, I think, is one way to think about it. I also think there's some interesting science on like integrating new routines or new practices, that the more we can tie them to existing routines, the more effective we're going to be at sustaining them. So if I brush my teeth every morning, or if I, eat breakfast and read the newspaper every morning, can you spend 5 extra minutes maybe using visualization or mindfulness or journaling on top of things that you're already doing? Because I don't think it needs to be an hour a day by any stretch, right? That I think there's some good research that would show 5 to 10 minutes a day of some of these practices can be really, really effective. And that's kind of thinking about the coach. In terms of the athletes, right? Because they have busy schedules too. I think transitions are a really, really helpful time to start integrating some practices that a lot of the athletes I work with are in college. And so they'll go from class to practice. And using that transition time, can we spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes to do some deep breathing, or to set some goals for the practice, to kind of shift out of that mindset of I'm in class to shift into this athlete mindset, and then also similarly to coaches, can we spend 5-10 minutes to shift out of that to just go be a human for a little while? And so I always think the transition times are some of the best times to integrate some of these practices, whether it's visualization or deep breathing or goal setting or reflecting, to kind of help them show up to wherever their feet are and be present in what they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so
Hey,
much.
Brian, thank you so much.
I think we'll let
Yeah.
you go now because you got to run, but appreciate your time so much. I took 2 pages full of notes, so I enjoyed that. And I had quite a few coaches say they want the recording too. So I recorded this, so we'll put it on YouTube if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's great.
And you can have
Perfect.
access to that as well. If anyone wants to rewatch, they can. And then the coaches that couldn't be here, there's a handful of those, probably 10 to 15 that will be getting this recorded as well. So, Coach Moses, I know you had a question. Maybe he can reach out to you. Is that okay?
Please do. Yes. Yeah. Were you able to get my contact information?
Appreciate that, Brian. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great. Yep.
If not, I can share it with him too. So,
Yeah, please. Any questions, follow-ups, don't hesitate to reach out.
all right. Thanks a lot. And thank you guys, all coaches, for tuning in too. Appreciate you, Brian.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for having
Coach Brian.
Have a good
Brian,
Thank you,
man,
Coach
thank you very
Matt.
much.